All right. We are recording.
Yeah.
This is cool.
Yeah, this is really cool.
And as we start recording, your text message goes off. I'm gonna try to turn off notifications. So with discombobulation aside, this is the brand new podcast that us three friends are doing called Badass Books, where we discuss books and the like, because they are quite fun, quite awesome, and frankly, I started getting back into them myself with audiobooks, and I thought, why not make... Well, actually, Ligia, is that how you say your name?
I like to say it like Ligia.
Ligia, okay. Yes, Miss Ligia actually had the idea. Was it your idea for the book club?
I like to think it was something that we both kind of came up with.
True, fair enough. Yeah. So we decided to make a book club, and then Sammy and I here
Yo.
decided to, we had the idea of, what if we made this a podcast? And so we decided to, I wouldn't say reluctantly, but we just up and did this, and we thought, why not? This is a good idea. And Sammy, you actually had the idea of the name.
I did. It popped into my head, like we were coming up with the name, and I was like, well, I don't know why, but Badass Books popped into my head, and we went, let's roll with it then.
I mean, it's a catchy title, to say the least.
And it's got
I
like
think it's
alliteration
cool.
too, that we like.
Definitely. So, in honor of today's first episode, we are actually going to be doing a somewhat really crazy title that even me personally, I think is like, this is a bit extreme for our first episode, but hey, this is where we're going to dive right in. And I think when I was doing research, there's not a lot of videos on this, at least by big names. So I think it'd be nice to like bring it to light because of the story as a whole. So this first episode, we are going to be talking about Lolita.
Oh boy. I feel like using the Stanley Kubrick tag that they used to promote the movie, which is, how do you make a film like Lolita? Or how did they make a film like Lolita? Now I'm wondering how we're gonna make an episode like Lolita.
I mean, personally...
Don't be surprised if we put that in the description.
Personally, I don't even know why they made it a film. Like, it did not need to be one.
There's like 2 film adaptations, and
how many adaptations were there?
there's the Stanley Kubrick one, and then there's the 1997 one, but with Jeremy Irons and Dominic Swain.
Oh, he's actually... Oh, that's funny that I didn't know Jeremy Irons was actually in it because he narrates the book that I read.
Yeah, he plays Humbert in the 97 adaptation.
Good
And
Lord.
I would say that's more closer to the book, I think.
I have not seen either one, so again, I find that pretty funny.
I've seen like clips here and there, and I get an idea of what they did and what they kept and what they didn't keep and what they changed.
No, honestly, in like my limited research, the one thing that was certain was that they completely changed up their relationship, where they're saying that Humbert was like a victim per se.
Yeah, and that's a common misconception when talking about Lolita, especially on the back of the book. One of the critics calls it the best love story ever told, which is absolutely not the case. For some reason, people mistake it for a love story when it's really not. It's actually a tragic story about a man who basically ruins this girl's life. That's really what it's about.
He destroyed it. No way around it. He destroyed it. Just reading this book, like just listening to it, I was in wretched spirits. Like I was just so angered by Humbert's actions throughout the book.
And that's the thing, you should feel that way. Nabokov wants you to feel that way, wants you to feel uncomfortable, and that's kind of the idea.
And he portrayed that so well. Frankly, his writing was so articulate. Like I love how it was written.
Oh
Like,
yeah, the writing is gorgeous, despite the fact that this is a disgusting story. It's a very beautifully written one. Like, the writing is just absolutely gorgeous. Even the opening of the book is the most memorable openings I've ever seen to a book. Lolita, light of my life, fire of my loins, my sin, my soul. Lolita. The tip of the tongue taking a trip of 3 steps down the palate to tap at 3 on the teeth. Lo-li-ta. She was low, plain low in the morning, standing 4 feet 10 in 1 sock. She was Lola in slack. She was Dolly at school. She was Dolores on the dotted line. But in my arms, she was always Lolita.
that was a perfect reread.
Oh,
But
thank you. Thank you.
but before we continue, I think it best to explain to those who don't know what the book is, give a brief description on what this book is about and why it's so controversial.
All right.
So, the book is about I want to say middle-aged man. I believe I believe throughout the book he's in his 30s to early 40s.
Yeah.
The book, yeah, the book spans about like 5-6 years, right?
I'd say around that, yeah. I would say that.
So yeah, he's in his mid 30s to early 40s. I believe he is a school teacher, or is he a writer of sorts? I kind of forgot
I
what his
would say
profession was.
it's like a professor as well as a writer in a way.
But yes, moving on, he becomes infatuated with this young girl named Dolores Hayes when he ends up staying at a lodger's place. Like her daughter is Dolores Hayes, and he becomes infatuated with her. The thing is, though, she is only a girl of 12, and the whole book is just his monologue. I wouldn't even, not actually, sorry, not monologue, but his memoirs that he writes while in prison before he ends up actually dying in prison. But yeah, the whole book is just him recounting the events throughout those like 6 years of his life, meeting Dolores and then having this honestly disgusting relationship with her. And I believe, if I interpret this right, before he kills her.
He doesn't really kill her. He dies in prison and she dies in childbirth.
Okay. No, because like when I was reading it and I heard him talk about the gunshot, I was worried that he actually did in fact kill her.
Wait. By her, you mean Dolores, right?
Yes.
Because the mother dies getting hit by a car. Dolores dies in childbirth, and he shoots Quilty in the end.
Yes, I remember he shoots Quilty because to him, Quilty stole Lolita from him, even though to him he saved her from Humbert's perversions.
Yeah, but the tragedy is that Quilty turns out to be no better than Humbert, because it's basically Dolores basically tells him that, oh, he wanted me to make some films with a bunch of boys, and I said no, and he kicked me out. And
I do remember that too. Yeah, it's all about interpretation. I probably just misinterpreted it due to the fact that Humbert is in fact an unreliable narrator.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of this story, is it perfects the use of an unreliable narrator, and it seems definitely the kind of book you would want to read if you want to get inside the mind of a narcissist or a sexual predator. This is the book that will help you understand what goes on in this person's head.
Very much so, because throughout the book, like, all you can hear is him making excuses for his behavior, his attractions, his perversions. Really, everything that he does, I feel as though he has an excuse for.
And that's what narcissists do. In their point of view, everyone else is in the wrong and they're always in the right. And anyone who questions that is in a lot of trouble. That's the scary thing about narcissists.
Going so far as to multiple times address the jury that he expects to be in front of, like pleading his case almost.
Yeah, and that's kind of the charm behind it. Another thing about narcissists is that they're very charming. Like, you don't really suspect them to be deplorable people, and that's what's so scary about the narcissists, especially child predators, is that they're very charming. They know the right things to say and will even use colorful, educated language to like reel you in. And that's the case with Humbert. At least that's how I see it.
Oh yeah, because he played right into Dolores's girlish crush on him because of like how boyishly handsome he is, how interesting he is as a person.
Mm-hmm.
When she's just all over him, he just like keeps on going. He doesn't reject her. He doesn't stop her or anything.
Yeah, and the thing is, he's the adult. He's in charge of the situation, and that's what a lot of people seem to misunderstand when reading this book, especially the film adaptations, which I kind of think are partially to blame for this. By portraying Dolores, I'm going to call her Dolores a lot because that's her actual name, and I'm not going to call her Lolita because that's the name the Predator is giving her, and it just feels wrong to call her that, at least to me.
No, it does feel a bit wrong to like
Yeah, so I'm going to call her. I'm sorry.
encourage his ways almost.
But yeah, the thing is that Dolores gets like a bad rep for basically being this quote unquote nymphette or being this sexual icon when really that is not what Nabokov said to do, and that the film adaptations are partially to blame for that. In reality, she was a victim and she was groomed, she was manipulated, and her story ends very sad. Like, it's just a sad ending for her, and you can't help but kind of feel bad for her. And once you get outside of Humbert's point of view, you actually realize how miserable this girl really was.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's hard to like really pinpoint one bad thing because it was just ever continued. Like being groomed by Humbert, her mother being in a car accident, and then being stuck with that guy, being driven all over the world, going to multiple schools, being able to see like a limited amount of people
Yeah,
with whom Humbert tried to find like redeeming qualities in their looks.
yeah, it's really creepy, and it goes to the point where Dolores stops bringing any friends over because she doesn't really want any girl to go through what she went through, and I thought that was pretty telling of her character.
Oh yeah,
Little we see of it.
yeah, because she knows exactly what's going on, and like
Yeah.
the problem really is that she's trapped.
Yeah, and Quilty, she kind of just uses as her escape in a way, but that turns out to be just as bad as Humbert's. Like, good for her for getting herself out of that toxic situation, but it's kind of sad that she struggles and then she ends up dying in the end. And I'm like, what the hell, man?
Exactly, like the moment she has like any semblance of a good life with a good man who will treat her right, boom, she's dead and she can't even like enjoy the family aspect that she that was just taken from her.
Yeah, and there's also the one quote that I found the most heartbreaking in the entire novel, and that's when after Humbert tells Dolores that her mother is dead, he basically says she had nowhere else to go. And I found that line so heartbreaking in the entire book because he's taking advantage of an orphan's recent tragedy, and he knows that. He knows what he's doing. And it's just so depressing and really sick. And there's even a section in the book that says that he could hear her crying every night and he pretends to be asleep. And I'm like, how heartless can you be?
Oh, he just like it never stopped with him because he always like even when he calls himself out for his own like twisted perversions, he never once thought about stopping what he was doing and just being a father to her. Because strangely enough, there are moments in the book where he seems like he genuinely cares and like he acts like a father figure. But then it gets twisted around to like, wait a minute, no, he is actively grooming her, and then it's like, well, no, there is no real hope for you at that point.
And he gets very paranoid about anyone finding out what he's doing, and he gets more controlling of Dolores, and it's
tragic, it really is.
Yeah, you even have a psychiatrist in the very beginning of the book saying that this guy is a monster. Like, That's definitely a huge red flag, and that's something you got to keep in the back of your mind as you're reading this book.
Oh yeah, it's ever apparent, like nonstop. This guy is deplorable, and frankly, I want to strangle him.
Oh yeah, who wouldn't?
Oh yeah, like I said, I was in wretched spirits reading this book. Like at work, I was just doing much worse because I just like there are times where I wanted this book to end.
Oh yeah, I definitely have felt that way. Like it was hard for me to continue reading this because of how uncomfortable it is. Not gonna lie, it's a very uncomfortable read, despite the beautiful language.
I love the stark contrast of that because it shows like there's beauty in horrible things, and then horrible things can turn out beautiful. A prime example would be certain horror movies like Alien, or as I'm staring at posters right now, Clockwork Orange. Both movies have like horrible themes about them, but there's a certain beauty-esque to them.
Oh yeah.
Especially with Alien, the imagery portrayed in the film is just so well done, especially in the cinematography. But you're watching people get stalked and killed by a horrific creature. But it's a tough read, and not a lot of people. I wouldn't recommend this book to a lot of people, and frankly, I'm only ever going to read this book once. Like I have no desire to read this book ever again. Like I just want to hang it up and let it sit in my Google library forever.
I hear you on that, yeah.
But what I also find interesting about it is I think a book like this needs to exist. So if people read it, they only need to read it once. But in that one time, first of all, they need to understand why it's so taboo and controversial and why it's so important for society to learn that you got to look out for these monsters and this shit happens. It happens way more than we even think. So it's good to see like now we see their mindset, their actions, how they justify it, how they think they're looking, all crazy things like that.
Do we really ever want to know the mindset of somebody like that? Because then we're just going to creep ourselves out more when it comes to, well, I don't want to know what they're thinking because they're perverted as all hell.
While that's a good question, I think it boils down to we need to be uncomfortable to eventually become comfortable.
I don't think that's a topic that anyone will ever become comfortable with.
I mean, comfortable with the idea that we know what these people are thinking so we can actively seek them out.
Okay.
And remove them from society itself.
Okay.
Yeah, basically this is a cautionary tale to be aware of the warning signs. So something like this happens to someone else.
Yeah, and understand that a character like Humbert is not someone you want to sympathize with by any means. Like, you need to understand just because he's the main character doesn't mean he's a good person. He's a horrible person and deserves no sympathy. Want to keep, you have anything else to add?
Well, I never read the book, and for good reasons I didn't read the book. So, I'm kind of just feeding off of, like, you two and, like, how, like, what you two are talking about. But this book feels like something out of, like, a horror movie.
It very much is.
It is very much something that would be a horror.
It is, because besides his actions, like, just the way he talks to her sometimes is...
Gross.
It is. It's gross. Horrible. But, like, if you changed, like, the story, he almost talks to her like they're, like, star-crossed lovers, almost. Like, if you put this in, like, a regular romance novel of two adults... Like, it would almost be flattering how he addresses her. With just, like, that sincerity and that borderline eroticism because of his obsessions. But the fact of the matter is, because of the age, it just comes off as disgusting because this guy is, like, you could see, like, he is so obsessed with this girl that he doesn't understand.
And she's only, what, 12?
She starts at 12, she ends up 17 at the end.
Yeah, it's still underage.
Yeah.
That is still way underage for that kind of crap.
Yeah, she ended up getting married and then died at 17.
Oh. And you said through childbirth?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, dies in childbirth. Yeah, this is not a happy read. The way he talks to her is really, it's borderline just abusive, the way he treats her. Like, he threatens her with, if she ever tells anyone what's going on between them, that she'll be sent to, like, a orphanage or a foster home.
Oh,
Yeah,
And-
he's basically going to abandon her. He calls her his pet a few times.
Yeah, and he also calls her his aging nymphette, which is,
Like,
what the hell? And
I know.
pretty
like,
much buys her off just to shut her up.
Yeah,
Like,
he's
he buys her treats and candies just to kind of shut her up a little bit. It's just so eerie, and it's definitely. And he also isolates her from hanging out with other kids unless they're girls. Like, this is all what makes an abusive relationship, even if they were adults, it's still abusive.
very
Like,
much
he's
so.
Oh yeah, I totally agree.
And like going back to like the narcissism part, like he mentions at times that when she gets older, he'll lose interest. That like he gets annoyed with her behavior, expecting her to act like an adult, when in reality he fails to understand that she is a child. She's going to be acting immature and energetic. Like he almost like he sees her a few times acting like wanting to act like an adult, and then he just kind of puts it together like, no, she is an adult. She just doesn't look like it.
And
But
that's the gross thing about it, is he is basically putting her on a pedestal and trying to make her into his sexual fantasy. He doesn't get to know her as a person, and he doesn't like her as a person. He just likes the idea of her being basically a sex object, and that's where the name itself, Lolita, comes from. Just the idea of his sexual fantasy. And all because he's trying to relive a love that he had when he was a child with Annabelle. And in case anyone might have overlooked this detail, is a direct reference to Edgar Allan Poe's Annabelle Lee. They reference it a few times where he's like, I'm looking for my kingdom of the sea, the one that I shared with my beloved Annabelle. And the fact that she dies young it's all a reference to Annabelle Lee, and it's pretty clever. But yeah, the idea is that Humbert is trying to relive the childhood love that he had a long time ago, but never really got to go further with. And he sees that with Dolores and is trying to mold her into that sexual fantasy, even going so far as calling her Lolita.
And like which all of that does not justify his actions in any way. Like he is going about the completely wrong way.
No, absolutely not. No.
Yeah. And Sammy, you just asked me a question, and yes, he does in fact go.
I had asked if, and sorry for the triggers, I had asked if this was a form of rape.
I wouldn't even say form of, because at multiple points he actually does in fact
Oh Lord!
do that.
Ah, Jesus!
Oh, God,
This
yeah.
book is
Thankfully, Vladimir knew like to pull back with all that, and he spared the gory details.
Yeah, especially since this was a book that was written in like the 50s, 60s, somewhere around that time. Yeah, it was taboo even back then.
Very much so, but it wasn't taboo to smack your wife, which he also makes reference to, even going as far as to smack Dolores a few times just to set her straight.
I hated that part, and yeah, this was a very sexist time period where they wanted to control women and expect them to be perfect housewives, and the book definitely is making commentary on that.
Yeah, because like he just so casually says like, all right, I'm just gonna do this and it'll be fine, like it's not gonna be that bad, I'm just gonna smack her a bit, like just to set her straight.
Yeah, I really hated that part of the book. Like, that just, I really absolutely hated that part of the book.
I think my most hated part was the fact that he comes in, he manipulates Dolores' mother to the point of marrying her, and then just talks about how much he dislikes her, up to the point of her finding out Humbert's perversions, trying to stop it, and then ultimately failing because of a freak accident. I think at that point I was like internally screaming. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
Oh yeah, sadly this does happen with cases of child predators. They will marry the parents, mostly the mother, mainly to get closer to the child. It's really disgusting.
It's creepy.
And I wasn't sure if the mom was actually trying to protect Dolores or if she maybe blamed Dolores for Humbert being attracted to her.
I think it was referenced at one point that she blamed Dolores, but then tried to put a stop to it with the letters that she wrote. That would like the letters that she was going to mail, because I think one of them was addressed to Dolores herself.
Yeah.
Like I think she blamed Dolores, but then proceeded to try and help her.
Yeah, sadly, cases like this do happen, and it's really kind of tragic.
Exactly, and what's unfortunate is that the movies fail to see the real message of the book, like we were saying earlier.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it doesn't help that Kubrick was the one who really kind of started the trend a little bit, and another good example of why you should not trust Stanley Kubrick when adapting your novels. I may love Stephen King, his interpretation of The Shining, but this
it's a whole another ball game, and that actually that disheartens me a bit because I love Stanley Kubrick and all of his work.
But, he's very brilliant as a director, but he definitely fails to miss the point of the book. Now, every time anyone mentions Lolita, we get the heart-shaped glasses and the lollipops because of his interpretation of Lolita. And what doesn't help is that he actually changes her name to Lolita as her official name when no one in the book but Humbert called her that. And I'm like, what? Why change her name like that? Like, what the hell, man?
It's really a crazy situation that I don't think we're ever going to get a definitive answer for due to just Kubrick being dead for 20-something years now, like 24, 25 years.
Yeah.
And just, I guess he had his reasons for why. I'm not saying I agree with it, though, because I've never actually seen his interpretation, but frankly, I just don't agree with it. I love his work, but I do not agree with what he did with Lolita.
Yeah, I'm on the same book. I'm on the same boat as well. I mean, he's a brilliant director, but when it comes to what he did with the story of Lolita, it's a little insulting to what Nabokov was trying to achieve. I even heard that he had Vladimir Nabokov write a screenplay for him for the movie, and then he rejected it. Which I wouldn't be surprised if that's what actually happened. And I'm like, what the hell, man?
I'm not surprised by that either, but that just shows a level of disrespect and disregard for original material. And frankly, I think Vladimir should have. He probably did. He should have fought Kubrick on how the story was supposed to be made. I feel like Kubrick still would have made his interpretation, like what you said with Stephen King's The Shining, and I forgot the writer's name. I can't believe I forgot. But Clockwork Orange, Anthony Burgess is Clockwork Orange.
Yeah.
The movies are drastically different than the books. They tell drastically different stories because he just up and does his own thing.
Yeah, and in a way, still have your own opinion on which interpretation of the story you like, and in some cases, the movie will be better than the book. But in the case of Lolita, the movie is not better than the book because it basically sends all the wrong vibes and messages that were not intended.
I agree. It's just it completely switches around the characters, and frankly, it's a little disheartening to see what was once a victim becoming the aggressor in the eyes of people who watch it and interpret it that way, and then the aggressor becoming the victim.
I'm sorry.
Well, we're running on about 35 minutes. I think we're going to cut this one a little short for our first episode, but I found this to be quite fun. Yeah,
I actually enjoy this. I will admit I know this is a very shocking book to start our first podcast with, but
Very much so. But it's shocking, but it's also like it's such a pop culture icon that I feel more people should at least acknowledge its importance in the art world, and I feel that like it should be more. It should be thrown out there a lot more.
Yeah, definitely a good cautionary tale to let people be aware of, any wolves in sheep's clothing, if you may.
I think that's a good analogy. All right. Well, that will do it for our first episode. We will be back next week with a brand new book, either an interpretation or one that we all start reading together.
Yeah.
Now with the books that we're reading together, each episode we're going to be reading and talking about 2 chapters a piece per episode. If we decide to do more, we decide to do more, but that is going to do it for this episode. And like we said, this has been a lot of fun.
Very much so.
I am Father Panda.
I'm Sam.
I am the Lady Ligia.
We will see you guys later.